I remember describing it to a friend as like voluntary torture because you can't sleep, can't
Yeah.
socialize, you can't move properly, and you know that if you take steroids, it will go. So it's that
Yeah.
battle every single day of I'm not going to take steroids today, and then living through the day of just sheer agony is how I can describe it. I thought it was the end of my life. I was like, I'll never be able to do anything ever again.
Today we have Laura joining us, and Laura has a beautiful story. We were just laughing about her journey and where she's at now and how impactful and I guess the silver lining of having eczema is. Her journey was a long one, so it'll be a good one to share because there's a lot of people that are on Dupixent, afraid of coming off of it, lots of emotions around that. So Laura went through something very similar. So I think it'll be great to be able to share that, talk about the big aha moments and some big pivotal turning points in her eczema healing journey to help her go from having eczema and now living a life that's not controlled by it and now wanting to also help people with eczema, which is beautiful. So it's always nice when you can speak to somebody who's been in the trenches and has had eczema ruling their life and then go full circle to be in a place where they're empowered and in a place where they can actually help people, which is great. So thank you, Laura, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, so to get started, I always like to go back and chat about where it all started. So, what was eczema like for you at the beginning? How did it affect you day to day?
So I've always had eczema ever since I was a little girl. And my dad is a big, ironically, my dad was a big sort of believer in natural remedies. So as a child, I grew up with really severe eczema, but I never took any medication for it. And I always used to sit, like I remember having super sore eczema on my legs and having to sit not on the carpet at school and sort of being separated from everyone. And then it sort of went away. I remember us talking about this sort of like dip where we have it in sort of for like 7 years and then it disappears. So in my teenage years, I was completely eczema free. And then I went to university. And when I went to university, obviously I started drinking, I started partying, I started going out all the time. And I started to get little patches on my on my arms and the back of my legs. And I decided to take some steroids for it when I went to the doctors. It was the first time in my life I'd ever taken any sort of medication. So that was when I was about 20. And from there, it was kind of a downward spiral. My eczema sort of got worse and worse, and I was using stronger and stronger steroids. And so I remember squeezing tubes of it into my moisturizer, and I was covering sort of my whole body in steroids. And yeah, there were some pretty bleak times when my whole face would sort of blow up. And I think being on the amount of steroids, oral steroids I was taking super regularly, and my face sort of started to swell. And it was just a really, my 20s was a really difficult time because I was super ill. And I think mentally as well, when you're dealing with being a young woman, 20 years old, sort of just experiencing dating, and I was covered in these sores, and just as everyone with eczema will know, like just something wasn't right inside. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. It completely ruined my life. Like like I said, I didn't really date. I really struggled socializing after I'd had this big stint of partying because it was so visual for me. I had it super severely on my face. So yeah, my early 20s was a lot of masking the problem with as many different creams and pills as I possibly could. And it was a difficult it was a difficult few years.
Yeah, and I think thanks for sharing that, but this is just good awareness for people that are doing that at the moment. So there's nothing that is wrong with taking steroids if you're using them responsibly, but
Absolutely.
unfortunately, there's no guidance where it's like, oh, you have eczema, just take and use this cream, take the oral steroids, and that's all that we can do. Where there's a lot more that you can do, but also there's this thing called topical steroid withdrawal if your body can become dependent on it, and people don't have that information, so they can't make an informed decision whether or not they want to take it long term. And then it's hard because then you're using the steroids and then your skin actually gets worse to the point where you can't use them anymore because it's not making a difference. And then you try and stop and your skin blows up. So
Exactly.
tell me about your experience coming off steroids.
Yeah, so I think it got to, I went traveling. I picked up smoking. So my lifestyle was pretty poor as well. I think I'd given up on my body. Like we weren't connected. We weren't listening to one another. I hated my body and I felt like she hated me. So I was smoking pretty heavily. I was drinking pretty heavily when I traveled. And then I came back to London and I think I had a stint of 3 months where I was using Predes. I don't know how to pronounce it, Predes. And I did it back to back for 3 months and my hair was coming out in clumps.
Right.
And just my like face was super swollen. And then the pandemic happened. So I went home and to Essex, and I'd been in London sort of getting my medication from a private dermatologist in London, and also just ordering more online when they wouldn't give it to me.
Yeah.
It was essentially a bit of an addiction, right?
Yep.
And I got to the point where I had run out of, because of the world coming to a complete close, I had no access to the medication I was using. And I was living with my mum. So it went about a week and I hadn't used any steroids and I couldn't get more. And it was like right in the peak when everything was locked down. And my mum, I was sort of panicking and had a bit of a mental breakdown because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I kind of came clean to my mother about the drugs that I was on. And we had a cry and we made the decision together that night to stop taking them.
Yeah.
Which was maybe the most terrifying. And I'm so great without minimizing the profundity of what people went through. But for me personally, I'm not sure what would have happened if the pandemic hadn't have hit when it did, because I then obviously started to go through topical steroid withdrawal and I was severely unwell, as I know people in this program and others who are going through TSW can relate to, as it being just sort of one of the most difficult periods in my life. It feels, I remember describing it to a friend as like voluntary torture, because you can't sleep, can't socialize, you can't move like properly, and you know that if you take steroids it will go. So it's that battle every single day of, I'm not going to take steroids today, and then living through the day of just sheer agony is how I can describe it. And I did some research. I worked with a nutritionist, so I was quite like committed to the natural way of healing. And I went to Greece and rented a sort of villa for 2 months completely alone, whilst my skin was sort of open, and I experimented getting different body parts into the salt water. Because it was so like stingy, so for each
Bless.
But by the end of the 2 months, I was swimming in the sea and I had the sun, and it was a pretty short stint, because I know some people go through it for a super long time. I sort of started to see real improvement after about 8 months, about 9 months.
Yeah, which is still a long time.
It's still a long time.
Yeah. Let's not breeze past that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a long time to be in pain, but for me, I genuinely thought my life was over when I stopped taking steroids, and my face was sort of that red, dragony, I don't know how to describe it, sort of that dragon skin.
Yeah.
I thought it was the end of my life. I was like, I would never be able to do anything ever again. So by the end of the 8 months, it sort of got better, and then I wanted to move back to London, and the skin was still pretty flaky and broken, and I just felt really inadequate. Like I remember having quite a lot of battles with like my femininity. It felt really,
of course,
I felt really like I didn't feel like a woman with my skin.
Yeah.
So I then made the decision to go on to dupilumab.
Yeah.
Which I actually had a really beautiful conversation with one of the other members in the program about this, because she was really nervous about taking it, and I don't regret taking it at all. Coming off of it has been the best decision ever, and I'm so happy. But also being on dupilumab for the year or two that I was on it, a year and a half, gave me my life back after it had been on hold with topical steroid withdrawal. And I genuinely believe that that stint of space away from pain and that freedom allowed me to then do the work that I've now done with the program, which I kind of consider to be like the deep work that has kind of changed me as a human being. So I'm grateful for dupilumab in that sense. I don't want to paint it as like, it's what we were saying before. I think it's really easy to demonize all of these drugs, and I don't think that they're great, but I think it's important to recognize the journey for exactly what it was, like the truth of my journey, and that those injections were a part of that journey for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really powerful when you said that it was like voluntary torture, because you know that there's something that can take it away and take the pain away. So like, and I think that's also, it's the mind game too. Because like one
Yeah,
day, like, what am I doing? Okay, I am I just torturing myself?
yeah.
And then the next, it's like, no, 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 like you're doing good. So you sway back and forth, and it's a lot,
Mhm.
so many highs and lows. Not
Yeah,
that I've never experienced it, but I've seen so many people go through it. So
yeah,
yeah, it is challenging. And I'm glad you also mentioned that there's a time and a place for these different drugs. There's a lot of people that just want to say like steroids are the absolute worst, Dupixent, like it's all the absolute worst. But with everything with conventional medicine, there's a time and a place for it. And your mental health is absolutely number one. And that's always what we tell clients in the program. If you need support or if you're really struggling and there is an option, like you said,
yeah,
taking that break, it is a difference between maybe having a breakdown or going into a dark place. So just being able to pause it and then having a solution to come off of it if that's a choice that you want. So
yeah.
well done. It's a big
Thank
journey.
you.
Yeah. And so what was a motivating factor for you to start trying to heal from the inside out and to come off Dupixent?
I think, as I know you speak about a lot, and I know lots of people on the program will feel, I felt like I tried everything. I had done all of the Google searches, and I just, I did all the castor pack, like the castor oil packs, and then I did all different sorts of diets that people had told me to do, and I tried all sorts of different drugs and medications. And some of them relieved some symptoms for sure, and some of them made them worse. But I think deep down, when I was trying all of these things, I was just lost, and I was super lonely.
Yeah.
Everything that you read on the internet that tells you, like for example, eating fruit, like people were, don't eat fruit, it's full of sugar, you can't eat that. And then you'd read another thing that's like, if you're not eating fruit every day, you're not getting and it was just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it was like to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore because I'm gonna go insane. And like to without exaggerating, I was like, I actually physically don't want to get up. Like I'm so sick of not knowing what's going on. So I remember when I was going through this topical steroid withdrawal, I was like, something is wrong in my body. Something isn't right. But I also believe in the body. I was like, there must be something that I can learn about what's happening inside that means I can better support it from the outside. And at the time, like I said, my eczema was horrendous, but I was also living a really unhealthy lifestyle. I think that's one of my greatest success stories. Like I was a partier, like I said, like big drinker. I was also I'm a teacher, so working that teaching job in London was I'm just an achiever, and I was like, I need to work and earn money, so I was working all the time and then staying up all night at the weekend. So I think for me it was a realization that I need to come back to like the most simple. I need to just get rid of everything on the outside because the body knows, but I just need to learn how to listen because I have no idea how to do that.
Yep. I have a very similar story, Laura, where yeah, my eczema went away in my teenage years and then it came back with a vengeance in my 20s. And I didn't want to admit it, but yeah, it was because I was partying and I was staying up all night. And I would still be healthy during the week. So I thought I was doing the right thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, the 80/20 rule, I was really pushing that. But these stories that you tell yourself and you're a little bit in
Yeah.
denial. But yeah, looking back, and I was like, well, yeah, I was like, alcohol is a toxin. So your body, like all the damage that it does, it has to detoxify the damage and the inflammation that causes in your gut, all of that. And then for me, really digging into, well, what was I using drinking and partying as an escape from? And using that as some of like the deeper work as well, which I kind of when I realized after, and been putting more of that brain skin connection. But yeah, when you can look back, you're like, oh, well, I understand when my body couldn't keep up anymore. Like I was pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, and then it doesn't have the resources anymore. And then everything just comes out through your skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so hard
Yeah.
to understand that when you're using, this is like
Yeah.
one of the problems with steroid is that it's, I remember someone saying it's like putting paint on a derelict house. Like, you don't know to the extent that the damage is being done sometimes because it doesn't look bad that day because I've put loads of steroids on.
Oh, that's a
So
great analogy. I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then eventually it just falls over.
And then
Yep.
it just falls because the foundations aren't there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So when you were deciding to start the programs, did you have any hesitations or any kind of
Yeah,
resistance? Yeah.
I did lots. I felt like the program actually found me. So there was a man in the school that I work in who suffered severely with eczema, and his was a lot more visible than mine was because I was taking the injections. And I remember him coming to speak to me about it, and I said that I wanted to start coming off the injections, and it's the first time that I'd sort of verbalized that I wanted to start coming off.
Yeah.
And then about 2 days after that conversation, I remember you kind of popped up on Instagram. Like, it's like found me.
Yeah.
And I did a little bit of research and I sat with it for a week, and then I had a call with Kessia and I heard the price, and I was like, I can't afford that. Like, my skin's not that bad. I'm on in my injections. I don't need it. And then after I'd made that decision, I couldn't sleep. Like, I didn't sleep the whole night.
Yeah.
And I just knew that, like, I was still having little flares and still using little bits of steroids, and I knew that it wasn't sitting with where I wanted to be. And I didn't think about it after that. I was like, there's something in my gut that is telling me that this is going to be money well spent. So I think, yeah, if I'm being completely honest, the money up front, I don't think when you're on the other side of spending that money, you don't realize what you're getting for that when you actually, because it's, that's what we're trained to think about, I guess. Now I'm on the other end of it. I can't tell you how differently I feel now. And thinking about what you actually get if you were paying for those things separately, how much more of an investment that would have been. Like, if each element of the program was split into, okay, I'm going to pay for a nutritionist, a coach, a breathwork coach, all of the recipes and resources, all of the mind skin coaching. If you separated all of that, I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure. That would have definitely not been feasible financially.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I think they were my reservations. And also, if I'm completely honest, I'd done a lot of things and I was like,
Yeah.
really?
I've already
Hmm.
tried all of these things separately.
Yeah. Oh, I've done the diets. I knew I had worked with a nutritionist, so I was aware of, how to balance your plate, things like this. I was already aware of it and something that I was trying to implement. So I was like, what new information can I get? And is it going to be worth the money that I'm investing? Because
Yes.
yeah, as a teacher, it's not something, I don't have loads of it. So I think they were my reservations.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that because that is something obviously that comes up with a lot of people, especially if you are that person who's tried everything and you're smart, you can research, a lot of this stuff you can find on the internet, essentially.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about balancing your plate, sleeping, okay, we know that there's a stress part of it. You're like, oh, okay, well, I know all these things already.
Mhm.
And like you said, at the beginning, up front, your skin was better than it was before. So then a lot of people think, well, I'm actually okay compared to what I was. It's not that bad. But then you don't realize that it changes your life in so many ways. Like you
Hmm.
might just be getting by, you might just be surviving, which before you weren't surviving, but you can actually be, and it's like it's cliche, but you can be thriving where you are
Yeah,
now. Like you're
completely
completely
agree.
different because I caught you just at the end before when I was going on mat leave and like seeing you on the calls, you were still like great, like bubbly on the calls, but now you just have a different vibrancy about you,
Yeah,
which you can't explain that. And then you can't really, when you're at the beginning of your journey, you can't really, it's hard to tell somebody that that's possible because
yeah,
they've been living in agony and pain for so long.
absolutely. And you don't want to, I think I said it on the call, one of the calls the other day. I felt a bit boastful because I was talking about how amazing I feel. And you don't want to minimize, because I've been in those places that some of the other people on the program have been in. So I don't want to minimize what they're kind of going through by being so celebratory about my own journey, you know.
Yeah.
But I
But
think,
it's also good though, and that's why
yeah,
the group aspect is great because people can see that it is possible. So
yeah,
it's quite motivating for people to be in a space where people have been able to get to the point where you're boastful and you're happy and you're vibrant, where you were really struggling before. So it is, yeah, I wouldn't try and hide it because it
yeah,
is helpful for people and it's motivating.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. What was different in the program from all of the things that you tried before?
Oh, I think the thing that was different is that before it was me against all of these things that needed to be done in order for me to be better. So I felt like, you know, on a game show before they're about to start a war and they're sort of like standing with a weapon. That's how I felt. Like ready to like attack the next diet or attack the next article that I'm going to read about how I should never eat gluten again for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
I think what was how that changed when I entered the program was that then it was me, it was like me surrounded by people that were sort of handing me the next step that I could take little bite-size chunks of. So it was so much more feeling like I was a part of something that was happening slowly and more naturally rather than this combative, like, what do I need to take on next? And I think there's so many reasons for that, because there was already information that was already there, organized well, nicely tied up, so that I didn't have to go around searching. It was sort of like they're presented to me in, you know, like special or organized timelines, but then also being held accountable by someone or by a group of people that were also going through the same thing, which I've never experienced before because I'm the only one in my friendship group that has eczema. I'm the only one in my family that has eczema. So
Yeah.
before, it was a very lonely place. And it's one of the reasons why I want to continue on. There's many, but it's one of the reasons why I want to continue on with the alumni program because I'm not ready to give up that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready to give up that community. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that you shared that because the community aspect is really important. And I was the same. I didn't know anybody else that had eczema. I was the only one. So I would talk to a few people. Most of my friends didn't realize until I actually started posting on the internet about it, didn't even realize how bad it was. And there was like my partner at the time, we would talk about it, and he was so supportive, but when people don't know what it's like day to day, it's hard. So
Yeah.
being able to speak to people who have eczema is, and then to go through a journey and have a shared experience is so important because we're humans, like we're social beings and we are meant to do things in a pact and in a group. So when you are doing it on your own and alone, it is hard. And it might not feel like it at the beginning, but when you do, when you can open up and you can talk about it and you have space and safety to do that, it actually is a big turning point in your healing journey, because it's not something that you have to hide all the time, because we're always hiding, right, with long sleeves, or if you have
Yeah.
a big flare up at home. So it's just one more thing that you have to hide. So it is so important to have that community. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm a more of a private person. And having not been in a community before, they feel like they don't need it. And they feel
Mhm.
like they just want to go to see a naturopath or nutritionist and do the one-on-one. Having done both of them, how was it different for you in terms of the healing? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I think great question, because you do have that aspect in the program, right? Like you have a one-on-one nutritionist who knows my case super well and is going through all of my data. I think the difference for me being on those calls was the brain skin connection, which I'd never had before. So
Yeah.
I identify as a super spiritual person. So I had done some yoga and I had sort of dipped my toes in meditation and things like that. And then separately, I'd seen a nutritionist and I'd never connected the two. They were very separate entities for me, which again, it's like, it's not that I didn't know about these things. I think that the amazing thing about the program is that it brings everything together. Like the body is holistic. So attacking it from anything other than a holistic perspective is not, well, it wouldn't be the path that I would choose. I don't want to minimize other people's paths, but yeah. So I think, so yeah, I think the difference between seeing a nutritionist one-on-one and the Love Your Skin program is that the way that I speak to myself and the way that I think is just as important as the diets that I'm going on. And I'd never realized that before. I thought, yeah, I know I need to meditate. Everyone does. But I'd never realized how important it is for us when you have an inflammatory disease to minimize the inflammation in your mental state.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you can do, I tried everything separately as well.
Mm,
But I didn't do it all at the same time, which is really important. That work has to be happening together. Because, yeah, you need to get your body in a state to heal, which your nervous system state, that stress, high stress, go, 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 always busy, distracting yourself, suppressing emotions from drinking and partying, suppressing emotions from like being busy, all that is going to impact your ability to be in a healing state. And
yeah.
it can happen separately, and especially for somebody who doesn't have it chronically, but it's going to be a lot quicker and faster if you do it all together. And also when you have a multimodality approach and you have practitioners that are working together, because we have group chats where all of us are talking, so you guys don't see it in the front end, but we're all chatting to see how can we help support our clients better. So it is important to have all of the different aspects connected. So you have like your nutritionist chatting, you have your coach chatting, you have your breathwork facilitator, you have Karen who's the psychotherapist, you have it all connected and everybody chatting about it. So that is a really important piece. Yeah, when you can have that.
I completely agree. And I would argue that for me, it was essential.
Mm,
For me, it was. And
yeah.
that comes across it really comes across in the calls and the interactions that you do have with people, that they know exactly who you are and
Mhm.
where you are and where you're at. And, I don't know how the nutritionists do it when they're, working with so many different people, but to come onto the calls and you ask a question about, how do I integrate apple cider vinegar? And Christine's like, oh yeah, but remember you're on this, so that will work with that. And I'm like, wow, you do know what is going on. Amazing.
Yeah.
And to everyone as well, not just for everyone on those calls.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is because, like, all of us, we all care and we've all been through it. We've all had our own journey with our skin and different illnesses. So we do know what it takes. And like everybody just really, really cares. And that's what's so
Yeah.
great about being part of the community is that everybody in the community as members and also the people that are helping, like, we're all there for that shared experience and to help support each other, which is actually really beautiful.
It's super beautiful.
Okay, let's have a little chat about when you were deciding to come off Dupixent.
So I knew that I wanted to come off. That's kind of why I joined the program, because I had like two big moments in my life. The first one coming off of steroids, and then the second was before I joined the program, where I knew that something was changing. And I knew that being on this medication didn't align to my values anymore. And again, that's not me saying that these medications are the devil or anything. I just knew that for me, taking that medication every 2 weeks and injecting it in my stomach did not align to my values, and it made me uncomfortable. And I knew I wanted to stop. I had no idea how. So when I first joined the program and we did some sort of reflections and intention settings and what I wanted to get from the program, I didn't write to have clear skin. I didn't write to never have eczema again in my life. Like, that's not what I wrote down. I literally, the only thing I wrote down is to live a life where I don't have to take Dupixent. That's what I wrote as my goal for my 6 months.
Yeah.
So when I started the program, I reduced the dosage. So I was only injecting once a month, not every 2 weeks.
Yep.
And I started to flare quite badly, like on my face. And then I don't know what happened. It was a mindset call. It was a beautiful call with all of these amazing, I think it was an all female call, all of these amazing women speaking, and Mandy talking about, growth and consistency. And I was like, I'm just gonna, and I was going traveling for a month, so I knew that I wasn't gonna work and I could be in the sun. And I was like, I'm just gonna not take Dupixent and see what happens, because I feel so supported by the program that if anything goes horribly wrong, I feel like now is the time. Because if I wait, because my original plan was, I'll wait till summer, I'll do all the work, and then I'll wait till summer when I'm not working, and then I'll just do it. This was sort of in the December time. And I just stopped taking it, and I kept all of my injections because I was terrified that something horrible was going to go wrong. So I was like, it's fine. If I need to take them again, I will. And I remember actually I spoke to another member of the group who had given it up. And I remember her saying, like, I was okay. And I think actually now I reflect on it, I'm not sure that I would have given it up then if I hadn't spoken to her. If I hadn't have had the validation from someone else that had gone through my journey. Again, I didn't know anyone who was on the drug. Like, I've never met anyone who was taking the same thing as me. So to have the validation from someone else who had done that journey in the program, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I've never taken an injection since, even when I was having bad days, because my skin did, it was tough, but there was a lot of withdrawal. There was a lot of sort of histamine reaction as my body was readjusting. And there were a few dark weeks, but yeah, I haven't taken an injection since. And that was I took my last one at the end of November, beginning of December.
Wow. Well done. Well done. And that's great that you were able to feel safe enough and feel supported that you were able to do that. And also that you were able to reach out and to have a conversation with somebody and to feel, validated, and that it was okay and that it is possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And separate from the medical world. I think that's another thing about the program that gave me the space to do what I did, was that my interaction with eczema was either doctors telling me that I was going to be very, very sick unless I took steroids, and that was that narrative, or it was a minefield of people telling me that, I'm going to die if I eat a carrot because it's got too much sugar in it. And they, like that was like kind of all I had. Like, either I'm alone in this like holistic, crazy health world where all the information is conflicting, or I have doctors telling me that I'm an idiot because I'm trying to heal my eczema with vegetables, which is literally what a dermatologist said to me. That's a quote.
Oh my gosh.
So I think the program, having someone or having people it's an experience-centered source of information. Like a medical, I'm not devaluing the incredible work of what our doctors do with regards to all chronic illnesses, but then also having another like experience-centered, researched, qualified group of people that believe the same as me, had the same values, that could talk about my medication, but separate from, an institution where I had felt quite let down and terrified of, quite frankly, because of what I went through with topical steroid withdrawal. Yeah, having that is just pretty special and nothing I've experienced before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was my whole point of wanting to create the Love Your Skin program. Definitely not to like demonize conventional medicine because we need
No,
it
yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
great and saves lives. But there are gaps in conventional medicine and there's also gaps in holistic and alternative medicine as well. In the way that doing like the one-on-one approach and also a lot of its restriction and then fear of food, and then doing extreme things as well. So really trying to bridge the gap between both of them and create something that does cover everything. And also it is a program that's based on experience and it is just about how can you live your life so you're not ruled by your rashes. It's nothing like completely extreme like you're saying balancing your plate, that's what you learn at the beginning. I'm like, this is very elementary, and at the beginning I was like, oh, like do I like, I don't want to tell people this at the beginning because they're going to say what am I even doing, but it's essential. Like you have to be able to
So
know how to
essential.
eat as a human, and most
Yeah,
people don't.
yeah, it's true.
They don't
It's
do
so
it, they don't do it, they might know but
it's so true. We do kind of know it, but it's so it's so diluted in so many other things. So it's really hard to live a life. I have people now who I guess we'll get into this, but talk to me from school who don't have any chronic illness, they don't have any symptoms like I do, and they're envious of my life. They're like, "Oh, you eat so healthily. Like I wish I could be as disciplined as you." And we're not doing anything different from what everyone should be doing.
yeah.
That's what's really beautiful about our eczema is that all it's done is kickstart me. It's given me a reason to live my life as we all should be living our lives. Just because I have, a more immediate reason to do so than perhaps someone who doesn't have a chronic illness. But they should be doing the exact. All I'm doing is eating well, sleeping, and prioritizing my body. That's all. It's nothing like wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That is definitely the silver lining. And the way that I think about eczema is just that the engine life and the engine light in our body goes off a little bit quicker than for most people. So
Yeah,
for a lot of other people, it might like it shows up in different ways. Like I talk about my sister, she has migraines. So it's the same thing. Hers comes out as migraines, mine comes out as skin rashes, but it's just that engine light saying, hey, whoa, 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 we need
yeah,
to wind this back a little bit. And it's just how to be human, essentially. Yeah. Yeah. So apart from the sleep and eating and those foundational aspects of eczema, what were some of the other root causes that you've investigated and things that contributed to your eczema?
yeah. So this is, I think, the beauty of not being on medication is that you really can start to, because I've been on medication for the last, I don't know, like 15 years or something. So now I can actually start to see for the first time in my like adult life with eczema what is happening naturally without all of the sort of different signals that the medication perhaps gives. So once I came off Dupiexent, the things that I started to investigate were, so I did my GI map, I did some blood work, which was all great. I don't think there was anything that was super different from a lot of eczema sufferers. So a few parasites, well, a parasite going on, some bacterial overgrowth in the gut, and then my blood work also recently, another reason, which sounds crazy that I'm saying it in a positive way, but I feel really thrilled about it. One of the reasons I'm continuing is that my blood work has maybe detected like an underactive thyroid, which is linked to PCOS, which is also something I've been diagnosed with. So there's potentially some thyroid autoimmunity going on, which is contributing, which, like I say, I'm thrilled to learn about because it's never, I've never been able to tap into that before. So
Yeah.
I'm, learning all this new stuff with Christine, who's a thyroid expert,
Yeah.
about what I can be doing to support that. And then the big ones for me, again, I would have thought about it before. I kind of knew, and then listening to your story, something that I am concrete on is that I live in a city that is hugely polluted and there's not enough sun. And when I am not working and when I'm in the sun, my eczema is almost not there. Like it doesn't really matter what diets I'm on. My biggest well, I believe that my biggest root cause is from speaking to the women that and the people that I've spoken to in the program and listening to their experience is environmental. So sun, so weather. When it's cold and wet, my eczema's bad, and the pollution in the city I'm in. So I just have to move to a tropical country. Fine,
That's the easy solution.
I'll do it.
Yeah, the environmental piece is big. Sun, obviously we need vitamin D, and that's gonna support your thyroid. It's gonna affect your immune system.
Yeah.
We need vitamin D for everything. Also mood too.
Yeah,
That I It's a night and day for me. If there's a patch where it's like rainy and gloomy when the sun comes out, I feel like I'm a flower blossoming again. But yeah, I with my story too, I noticed when this was, I don't know, maybe like 7 years ago now, but when it would be before it would rain, I'd start getting itchy and I would start itching and I'm like, okay, it's gonna rain. I felt like the weather woman. Yeah, but also that was for me, that was when my drops in the bucket, when I had a lot of inflammation in my body, and that would be like a little tipping point for me. So I was also, that was a point when I was doing a lot of partying, not sleeping, and just really go, go, go. But yeah, those are big aspects. And the thing is as well is that you could think, like, you look at it and compare yourself to somebody who doesn't have eczema. So their detoxification pathways are working better. Their gut, you name that, there's some inflammation and dysfunction in the gut. And then also not being able to convert vitamin D as effectively. And then there's also the PCOS picture. So you can start piecing together. And then when you can get a hold of what's happening with your thyroid, PCOS, and everything with your gut, I have a sneaking suspicion that the environmental pieces won't be as impactful. So that'll be a good little baseline to test yourself with.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm taking away from the program in a big way is that there isn't, although I've got all this amazing information now on my root causes, I think when I came in, what we want to do naturally as human beings is say, aha, it's that food. If I stop eating that food, I'll never have eczema again because that's causing my eczema. Whereas what I've learned in the program is that I actually can have, I don't actually want to, funny enough, but I actually can have a glass of wine if I want to, and I'm not going to have a flare up. It's not about that glass of wine. It's not about anything not about any one thing in particular. It's actually creating an environment where we're stable enough where we then can eat the little bit of gluten or have the glass of wine or, spend a few days in a rainy, cold city because it's an amazing city. All of these, different things that before I maybe would have been like, no, like that will cause my eczema.
Yes. And thank you for mentioning that because it is so easy to paint something as good and bad. Like that's like the devil, we can't do that. But that's not the way that we want to look at it because that's a really unhealthy attachment to different things as well. And it is about balance. So it is, okay, can I get to the point where I can have a glass of wine? Because that's the aim, right? You don't want to have to restrict everything. And we don't want to have to say, you can never drink or you can never eat gluten, you can never eat ice cream. You can get your body to a point where you can, because that's the whole brain-skin connection that can create a level of anxiety and fear and stress on its own as well, which again is that eczema stress cycle, which is just, there's so many different cycles and loops that can feed into each other. So, I really loved what you said earlier about you came into the program and the goal wasn't to have clear skin. That's really great because a lot of people, it's okay, I need to be at this point, and have clear skin and never have eczema again. And this is where I need to be. And then they'll come to the end of the program. And I mean, we say it like there's no cure for eczema. So you're still going to have it, but it's about managing and controlling it. And okay, I can have a glass of wine. If you start getting itchy, you're like, okay, well, maybe it's because I had a glass of wine, or maybe you have a bottle of wine and you're like, oh, well, it's probably because I had a bottle of wine. I had a great time with my friends and that was great. But now I know I probably pushed my threshold at this point. So now I just won't have a bottle of wine for the next few nights and let the drops of the bucket go down.
Yeah, 100%. And isn't that like an amazing, especially for people who I'm sure like me felt like their life was over when their eczema reached the worst point that it's been at, that realization is really cool.
Yep.
To know that.
Yes, to have that freedom.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for sharing. There's so many just great aha moments for people. And do you have any words of wisdom for somebody who might be feeling like their life is over and they're still covered in rashes on Google, searching, not knowing where to go?
Yeah, I think my well, like you've got all the things that we say on the program all the time, which is that, you know, the journey isn't linear and that healing is possible, which I echo. All of those things have been fundamentally true for me. But I think for me, the what the program has allowed me to do is, and I think the biggest change for me as a person is that my skin is better, almost non-existent. My eczema is non-existent. And yes, I look great compared to how I did when I started. But the thing that was the biggest game changer for me, it was looking at all the other incredible people on the calls who looked like I did when I was going through what I was going through. And never once did I look at any of the people sharing their story. Never once did I say the horrible things, or never once did I think the horrible things that I would say to myself when I was struggling. And I never looked at anyone and thought, you know, they must be weak, they must be eating badly. They look ugly because their skin is red and itchy. And I the complete opposite. I looked at all of these incredible people who were going through the exact same thing as me, if not worse than what I'd experienced. And I was just in awe of everyone. And it's really allowed me to be in awe of myself and what I've achieved. And
Yeah.
I get emotional even thinking. But yeah, my words of wisdom would be that this journey is really difficult, but including myself, are in like extremely incredible and brave people. And when you can really believe that, then I think the skin healing comes pretty quick after, when that's really sunk in. Like my skin drastically started to heal within literally weeks of me genuinely believing that. And yeah, it took me a few weeks. I had to keep saying it. But like I said with the program, the more time I spent with these incredible people that had done what I was trying to do made me realize just how special we are as eczema sufferers. So that would be my words of wisdom.
Oh, Laura, that is so sweet. That is just so beautiful. And I think that's really important because you get on the calls, you see everybody struggling, and you have compassion for them, and you're a beautiful person for saying that. But I think that's helpful for people who have that parts of them in their mind that are saying, you look ugly, or you're never going to heal, or you ate X, Y, and Z, and you did that to your skin, but nobody else is thinking that. And you realize when you can differentiate that, you're like, oh, I can see like why this is coming up for me. And it is just so nice that you were able to have that aha moment. And it is across the line. Like, if anybody's watched a few different interviews, for the people that do put the work in and they do that self-examination and then they notice that stuff coming up and then they have the tools to be able to regulate, rewire that response, that is one of the biggest shifts in the program for people. And that's when they can start healing because you're getting your body in a state to heal. Your body's no longer the enemy and you're not separating yourself from the body. It makes such a difference. So I just want to say, well done for putting all the work in. Not everybody jumps in as much as you did and also as quick as you did. So it obviously is why you've had such great results. And now you're so vibrant and smiling. And yeah, you've done well.
Thanks so much.
You've done really well. Yeah. And do you have any words of wisdom for members of the Love Your Skin program that are just getting started?
Yes, my advice, I think this has been said on another interview, but just to reiterate, I think that it can be overwhelming to start with because there is so much amazing stuff. But the advice that we get at the beginning, which I kind of didn't listen to at the beginning, I wanted everything and I was reading everything and I was like, I'm going to, eat all of the things and go to bed at 8 p.m. every single night and it's going to be perfect. I think for values to change, which is what has happened for me in 6 months, like not only my eczema has got better, yes, but who I am as a person, like what I value doing with my time, what I value eating and putting into my body has completely changed. And I think value shifts, which is what is going to heal the eczema, not just fads or, diets that we do for 2 weeks. Like changing our values does take time. That's why the program is 6 months long. The effort shouldn't be sort of supercharged into the first month. It's about picking the things that you are aligned with and what things that you can slowly start to change so that you can slowly build up the identity of who you want to be rather than just changing behaviors for a week and then changing them back and then changing them again. That was a bit of a muddled answer, but I hope it makes sense.
No, totally. That was actually like very well articulated. I was like, wow, Laura, that's great. But yeah, that is the reason why it is 6 months. And it is a journey. So it doesn't stop at the 6 months. It's a continuous journey. And yeah, we say at the beginning of the program, slower is faster. So I've done it where I do it at lightning speed. The program was actually set up when I first started because that's how I was. I was like, lightning speed, do it. Nothing else is going to work if you don't do it this way. And then I realized that I was burning people out. I was like, oh, because that's just my pattern, right? And that's just how I saw and lived the world. But yeah, once we really slowed it down, it does make a world of a difference because it's not a quick fix. And it's something that we want everybody to gain long-term sustainable habits so they can continue healing their body. And it's not always going to be, yeah, you have to go to bed at 8 and you have to eat this. You'll go back to normal life, but you'll have the foundational tools to be able to go, okay, I know what I need to be doing. And then the thing is that when you can slowly implement those, you'll see what works and what doesn't for you because it is individual. And then also you'll notice different things coming up too. Because if you do it for 12 weeks or even a couple months and then you just forget about it, you're not going to have the same impact. So it really is solidifying those habits. And I loved what you said, changing your values.
Yeah. Because then it makes it easier to maintain. Like it wasn't just like taking journaling, for example, is something I've always wanted to do. I love the sound of it. Never done it before in my life properly. I remember Mandy talking about it a lot on the calls. And I did it for a few days and I was like, oh God, I keep forgetting to implement it. And then I reapproached it. I was like, I have a busy mind. This is an outlet for my busy mind. My value is that my home and my bed is a safe space for me to sleep. So that is why the journaling is an important part of my values. And now I journal every night before I go to bed. And I don't even think about it. Like that's the kind of the impact that it has when you think about like what your value is. Like that my value is that my sleep is important and that my bedroom is a safe space and it's not a place where my anxiety is welcome anymore. Like that's a value, that's something I want to hold. So what can I do in order to maintain that? Okay, I can journal. And then it makes the habit so much easier. So much easier.
So much. So you don't have the resistance because it's always like, oh, like I'm going to be the devil. Ha ha ha, I'm not doing it. And it's always like a little game when you're trying to restructure your habits. You're like the devil and the angel. But when you can actually align your values, and this is why I want to do this, and this is the outcome that I want, and this is who I want to be, it is really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Laura. You
Thank
gave
you.
us some big pearls, some great things that could be helpful for other people, definitely for other members that have already gotten started. And thanks for sharing your journey as well, because there are so many people that feel like their life is over. And to see you come on the call and to see how vibrant you are will definitely give people hope that there is another way that they can do things and heal their eczema, and also that there's hope that they can get to the point where you are now, which is great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for everything.